Hello and welcome to Knowledge by Nature. In today's video, this is part 2 of comparing dimensions math with primary mathematics. If you missed part 1, I will put that right here. That way you can go back and check out all of the things on the comparison of what is needed for dimensions and a look at the contents comparison. Before we get started, if this is your first time here, I love all things books and homeschool and sharing our journey with you. And if that is something that you are interested in, I would love for you to join our team and hit that subscribe button. If you are returning, as always, welcome back. It is always lovely to have you. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's dive back in and see what a lesson looks like between dimensions and primary. All right, now let's compare a lesson. So I've flipped to the middle of the book here where we are looking at multiplication. So multiplication is what it's called in primary. It's grouping and sharing when we're speaking with dimensions. It has suggested number of class periods, 4 to 5. It has all of your lessons here for dimensions. So one difference is how these are used. For dimensions, you are going to go to the page number, the lesson number in the textbook. You're going to have your chapter. But I noticed with primary, they actually reuse the textbook page a few times. And so that's something we will also look at the comparison so you can see what the workbooks and the textbooks look like beside each other. So your dimensions, you have this overview here, and then we have this notes to the teacher where it's talking about what the purpose of all of this is. It does say students will not be expected to know math facts from memory until dimensions 2A. That sort of thing I don't feel like is as heavily laid out in dimensions as it is in primary. I feel like primary kind of walks you through a little bit better as far as you need to know this. Students will not be memorizing multiplication facts until primary math 2. If you want to teach them skip counting, it just breaks down a little bit more. Even back here at the beginning of the book of primary, I noticed that it said students should have the following facts memorized by Unit 3. And so it had all these facts that you would need to make sure that they had done by the time you got to Unit 3 of this in primary. I just don't feel like that sort of note to the teacher is as present in this one, or if it is, I just didn't notice it very much in my use with this. This shows you all the materials that you will need, any black line masters you're going to need, any storybooks that might go along with it, and then we have the letters to home. So again, you can see that there's also this full blank notes page, so that's just another page that's kind of adding to this book. Could be very helpful. I don't know. I never used it. So we have the chapter opener here. One difference you're going to see is that you can see what the student textbook looks like right here. So I'll go ahead and pull over the Dimensions student textbook. You can see I have a miniature picture in my teacher's manual as they have this. Some people I have seen do not buy the textbook for dimensions because they just show their student in the teacher's manual. That's absolutely an option and a savings that you could do. I always did go ahead and purchase the textbook. I don't know that it was necessary, but I did. But you will see that you have your own little image here and you have all of the answers to that right there of the questions that you are going to have. Each chapter in Dimensions has this chapter opener where you are just introducing the concept, and then we go to the actual lesson here. So this is lesson 1. You see it is a 2-page spread on this particular lesson. We have our 4 textbook pages that you can see in your book. We can see the match. Here is the match. Match, 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 match. And again, all the answers are in the teacher's manual for you. And then here we have the exercise page 1. That tells you to go to the workbook. Okay. For dimensions, you have your think section where you are asking the students what they notice about the different foods that Dion is eating. You have the learn section where you have the students look at the page and discuss the different problems that is being done here. So it says there are 2 dumplings in each group. There are 4 groups. Here we can see they are doing the 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, where with primary, we bring that over. They're talking about the addition and subtraction of adding equal groups. And we are seeing the 4 times 3. This is an example to the teacher on how you could show them this and split it out for them. This would be the actual teaching activities of lesson 1. Here you have go to textbook page 42. Here is textbook 42. So you can see there's a pretty big difference in the way that the workbooks look. I feel like this one is much more cartoony, where this one is, but it's an updated cartoon, I guess you could say. So right here, you're saying think. How many of each food kind are there? Over here, it says count each type of fruit. So often they're doing exactly the same thing. They just reverse the way that they say it. Then we go over to our learn section. So before I get too much further, I want to come back here to our scope of work and show you where we are. We're on unit 4 of multiplication, because this is the biggest difference in dimensions and primary, I believe, is the way the lessons are broken out on how to teach in order. Dimensions, you have your chapter opener, your lesson 1, and that would usually be the end of the day. Where with here, we have understand the concept of equal groups, find the total number of objects in a given number of equal groups. We are going to use the textbook page 42 and 44, and we're going to use the workbook 66 to 67, and then this shows you your guide, which is your teacher's manual page right here. So like you can easily kind of find chapter 14 when you're looking at dimensions here. It says Teacher's Guide 1B chapter 14, or when you're flipping through here, sometimes it is a little bit harder to find the unit, but really not too much. So here we go. We have this lesson 1 where we're going to use page 42 and 44. So that's where we were just a moment ago. So we came to 42, and we have a different task that we would do. We would ask how many types of fruit there are, how many plates of pears are there, how many pears are on each plate, does each plate have the same number of pears, how many pears are there altogether. So you would ask these, you would get some linking cubes out, and you would show how to make the groups. Then you would have your students do the task 1 through 3 on textbook page 44. As we can see right here, it says encourage your student to find the total by repeated addition, not by simply counting. So you can see I'm actually skipping over here to page 44, and we are going to do number 1, number 2, and number 3. And our textbook answers are right over here on the corner of the page. After we do page 42 and page 44, not 43 yet, we will go to the workbook for this lesson, and that is over here. So it says do exercise 31. Now before we go to the workbook, let's again look at the textbook that we had with dimensions. So with dimensions, you are having the students note the equations and how the equations are related to the pictures. So they are going to be looking at this page. They're going to be looking at this and answering these either verbally or on a whiteboard. You'll have all of these practices here. Then you will have all of this practice here. Then you will have this do section, which all of this practice here. And then you will go to the exercise page. That is one thing that we found to just be too much for us. And we eventually ended up just not using all of this. But to me, that's a waste. That's what I was finding intriguing about this, is it's giving me what I need without excess. Now, if you need lots of practice, dimensions could be perfect, because you are going to have a lot of worksheets. There is a lot of textbook pages, and there are a lot of workbook pages for all of dimensions lessons. Almost all of them. Here's lesson 2. 1, 2, 3, 4 textbook pages, and then you go to the workbook, which is going to have quite a bit also. So that is really one of the biggest differences, is the amount of practice. But you have to remember this is for a classroom, and so you may need to modify this for you. We don't need to do all 3 sets. Maybe choose one. choose one, choose one. You can always modify this. Where I was getting is one of the reasons I went ahead and pulled primary to try is because I was getting tired of having to do so much modification. So again, side by side, we had 4 pages for our dimensions lesson, and we had 1 page and 2 page in the textbook for our primary. Both of them have little pencils. So right here it says after we do page 44, we're going to go to workbook exercises 30 and 31. When we flip back over to dimensions, it says right here, go to exercise 1, page 67. There will be more than 1 page, but we will definitely compare both of those. So here is the lesson for adding equal groups and dimensions. And I'm just going to zoom up really closely so you can see this. So if you want to pause this, you can take a look at this and see. So here's dimensions 1B for adding equal groups. Here is the second page of dimensions 1B, adding equal groups. Here is the similar lesson. Here is the same lesson for primary. There is your page to the teacher. And here is the lesson page. You can see everything is definitely more condensed in this version. Now let's take a look at the workbook. For dimensions, it says let's go to page 67. For the workbook, it says exercise 31 for this lesson. It says exercise 30 is more appropriate after the next lesson. So there is a little bit of flipping and flopping, which is going to take a little bit of getting used to when I am used to lesson 1, lesson 2, and that's just how the pages go. So we have exercise 31. There are pencils in each group. Chapter 14, there are blank equal groups. There are blank flowers in each group. So you can see we have 3 questions here, 3 questions here. Very similar, they're just kind of flopping the way that they ask the question. Then I'm flipping it so it's a little bit easier to see side by side. Here is the dimensions where we are drawing 3 apples in each bowl, draw 5 fish in each tank. Over here is, you're drawing fish, you're drawing apples. Then we have buttons on a dress and flowers on each towel. Here are these 2 pages side by side. So this is all there is for practice for primary in the workbook. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions. Some of them are a little bit of double, but that is the end of your primary. Now we will continue on with dimensions. So we had our 3 questions there, our 2 here. Then we go on where we have another question with 3 sections. We have another section of matching. We have a find the total and different sections here. Complete the table. Then we have one more set. Again, there is a lot of practice with dimensions. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages of practice. So that is something I would say more than anything is decide how many worksheets you want. This ended up just being a lot for us, and therefore we skipped a lot of the textbook. And most of the time we did the workbook, all of it, but again, it was a lot. One last thing I do want to mention about this workbook, let me see if I can find it. Here we go. Sometimes we have a challenge, and that is something I do enjoy with dimensions, is they have these challenge questions within the workbook sometimes. And it really does challenge the child to kind of think outside of the box. I didn't see any sort of challenge questions or anything inside this workbook, but I do know that they have the intensive practice workbook, and so maybe that is where you would get a little bit of those challenge questions, but then you're adding more workbook pages with that probably. So I know this has been a lot, and I really hope it was helpful and that it was nice to see 1B versus 1B with the dimensions in primary. I think this is anybody that's looking at Singapore math is really questioning which one. They're both going to be beautiful programs. I think you probably cannot go wrong with either one. It's just more of your teaching style. I do look forward to giving you a more updated video on how I feel after teaching it. I did want to mention, I opened this up and showed my daughter both of these pages. I didn't really tell her much about it. I just asked her, I said, your very first opinion of this, what pages do you like better? What do you like the look of? We didn't talk about what this was, what we would be doing about it. And I honestly thought she would choose the look of Dimensions. I really did. I just assumed this would be like a more streamlined look. She might like that better. But she chose this, and I asked her why, and she was like, I don't know, I just do. And I was like, okay. So as far as visually, she actually liked this one a little bit better. I was kind of surprised by that. For some reason, I thought this was something she already had, she was familiar with, that she might like this a little bit better. But no, she initially liked the look of these. Again, she hasn't used it. I don't know how she's going to like it when we actually get into it. I will show you that for sure after we do it. Let me show you just a few little comparisons here also on the textbook. So on the textbook, again, on the primary, it breaks out into the concrete, pictorial, and abstract approach. It tells you about the color patch that is used, the workbook pages, and then each unit is divided into parts. It talks about that same thing right here in Dimensions a little bit. Let me get this side by side for you. The breaks down the little learn, exercise, all of that in there, and then we have the contents. So if you did want to see the contents again, this is a little bit of a cleaner way to show you the contents versus the way that it looked in the Home Instructor's Guide. I really don't find the Home Instructor's Guide to be too difficult to follow. It is different. It absolutely is different from Dimensions, but you can just see, just kind of follow along. You have week 1, and then on week 1, I'm going to do both of these on day 1 because they're very, very short sections. And then we're going to do day 2, day 3, and then I will go on. Because this was 1B, it's starting probably midweek, which is why we're seeing that 3 days there. Because if you go to week 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of math, which I feel like is appropriate for what we have going on right now. But if this is confusing to you, I did want to mention, if you go to SingaporeMathLive.com, you can print off this weekly schedule. Some people find this a little bit easier. I marked where 1B started and went down. Personally, for me, I understood this pretty well. I understand what I'm supposed to be doing. These are my textbook pages. These are my workbook pages. These are the guides. But if you use the intensive practice or the challenging word problems, they have those pages listed here. So definitely if you use like more than these two, this would be very handy because it does show you what pages you would want to coordinate with those. But coming back to here, we've got, again, length isn't in this. I will hold this right here so that if you wanted to do a quick pause and see a comparison, I will hold this up for you. I will do the same thing for Dimensions 1B. This has a few pages extra to it. So there's page 1, pages 2 and 3, and page 4. I hope that I answered everything. If I didn't, please leave any questions or comments that you have down in the comments below. I will be happy to look up any answers that I can for you, help you in any way that I can, because I know personally this is a decision that is hanging in the balance for me as well, as I want to know which is which. For KA, I absolutely loved Dimensions. It was fantastic. It worked so well. Even all of the classroom activities worked really well. I just felt like they were so much easier to accommodate for your one homeschool child versus when I got into 1A. Everything just started getting a little more difficult to I was either skipping a lot or having to do a lot of modification, which brought me to primary. And I just thought it would be worth a try before I decided what to do for 2A. So I will be starting this on Monday morning. I'm actually really, really excited. I will be doing my regular videos that I usually do with a curriculum, as far as I will do a lesson with us. I will do an update to let you know what we thought of this. And of course, at the end, I will let you know what we end up choosing for second grade. Keep an eye out on my homeschool picks for second grade. That's coming up very soon. I am going to go ahead and give you everything I'm going to be using with the exception of these. I will let you know I am definitely using Singapore Math. I just don't know if it will be going forward with the Dimensions or if we are going to be switching to primary. If you have any suggestions about either one of these, please leave them down in the comments. We all learn so much from each other, and I would appreciate you being an active member of the comments on helping us figure out what, if anything, we need to know extra about this. So again, thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. If it was, hit that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye, friends.